I'm Philip, and today I'm going to show you how to match the look of film without using somebody else's preset, and I'm going to show you how to do it from scratch. So, right here I have two shots. One on the left is actually the Portra 400 film scan from the Contact 645. It's actually scanned on the Frontier Scanner, and on the right we have the digital equivalent to this, which was a 5D Mark III, and I think this is just a 24 to 70 lens. So the process I use to get it to match is basically like I just put this film scan on the left, and then I just started tweaking everything. So I've kind of got it right here the way I kind of like it. It looks pretty close. It's not perfect, but it looks pretty good to my eye. So to show you where we started, let's hit the reset button. And this is just insane that it looks like that. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the aspect ratio to 4:3, which is the same as 645 medium format film size. So we do that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is just, I'm actually going to change the color profile to Adobe Standard, which is still a built-in profile. It's just, I think it's just a little more subtle than the default setting. So to start, let's go ahead and just brighten this up a little bit so we can see what we're working with. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to adjust the white balance a little bit just to warm it up to get it semi-close. Now, immediately I noticed that this is a little flat looking. So let's go ahead and add some contrast by adjusting the contrast slider here. And then also I'm going to bring the highlights down some to recover some of this detail in here. You see what it looked like before. You got to be careful because if you go too negative on the highlights, you start to get this weird blue-gray happening in the white areas. So you just got to be careful to not overdo that. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is actually create a custom tone curve here. So with film, things aren't quite jet black, although they do have a lot of contrast in them. But if you zoom in here, you can actually see that my screen here is jet black because I just changed the background color to black. But you can see that this is just a little bit brighter. It's more like a really dark gray look. So in order to kind of do that on the same thing on digital, is I can kind of bring this up a little bit and you can kind of tweak it. So you can see how the digital actually holds a lot more detail in the shadows. But to just give it that little contrast look, you can actually pull this bottom note in and it will start to, now obviously you can't go that much with it, but if you just pull it in just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of pop. And then what I do is to pull the dot up a little bit just to bring it out of the pure black area. Okay. So the other trick I like to do is actually to edit with a white background because I think it lets your eyes adjust better to the overall color of the monitor as well. Sorry, I'm rambling, but here we go. So the next thing I really want to do is I think I'm going to warm this up just a little bit more. And we can notice that the blue areas are actually really different. So what we can do is just come down here to the colors and adjust the blue slider and just bring it into that blue-green area, which is in this case about a -20. The other thing about film is that it keeps greens really green, where like digital will actually go more yellow. So to fix this, I take the green slider and just kind of move it into this like more cooler green area. And you can kind of play with this and whatnot. The other thing about the greens is they're a little bit too bright for me right here, so I actually like to desaturate the green a little bit just to make it a little more natural than it would be normally. And the same thing with the yellows. I feel like the yellows are just a little bit too bright. Okay. And we can see his skin is a little bit magenta, so I'm going to just take the orange hue and just move it just a little bit. And so this is before and after. That's looking a little bit better. It's obviously not an identical match, but I might actually bump up the white balance just a little bit more. So we're getting pretty close here. So let me go ahead and show you what it looked like before and then after. This is looking a lot better. The other thing that we can do is maybe add a little bit more color into his skin. So I'm going to go saturation and just bump it up just a little bit. Now this is looking pretty sharp. The other thing I like to do is kind of use this, add a point right here on the turn curve and just kind of boost this a little bit. We can actually do a little bit less exposure when we bump up this, and it actually adds a little bit more contrast to it as well. Now in this situation, I'm seeing, I think I want to just do one more notch on his skin tone there. So this is feeling pretty good. So another thing I like to do is just come down here and add just a little bit of split toning just to kind of tint it ever so slightly. Not too much. You can go crazy with it, but I think if just somewhere in a 3 to 5 range feels pretty good. So next I want to take away some sharpening. I think I just want to go about 25. And I'm going to add just a little bit of grain on here. I like about 13 or 15, somewhere in there. You can see the grain up here on the film scan. It's looking pretty close. So I think that is about all. If you wanted to bring a little more tan into the skin, you can take the luminance and come down, but don't go crazy with it. I think this is feeling pretty good. I think I did a little bit too much. That right there looks pretty good to me. We can brighten it up just a little bit. And there you go. Now, let's go ahead and do another photo here. So I've got this one. This is another film scan, Portra 400. And let's go ahead and reset this one. You can kind of see what it looks like before. And once again, I'm just going to change this to a 4:3. Now I'm hitting Shift R to do a reference image. And you can simply just right click an image and hit set as reference photo. And that will put it right here on the left so you can look at it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is change this to Adobe Standard. I'm going to brighten it up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and warm it up too. Let's go ahead and add contrast. Bring the highlights down. Not too much though. This goes really funky. Somewhere about right there. Let's go ahead and maybe drop the blacks down a little bit. Let's do our tone curve here. Just kind of pull that in, but also go ahead and bump it up like this. Now I'm noticing that I think I want to pull the blacks back up to where they were before. So before and after. Okay, this is looking good. Maybe a little bit higher on the whites, highlights rather. And let's go ahead and warm it up just a little bit. Okay, so as you'll see here, the blue and the greens is really how you tell the difference between film and digital in my eyes. So you can see here, grass and greens on digital go yellow for some reason. So what I want to do, once again, come to the hue and saturation slider. Let's take those greens and let's move them into the cool zone. Right here, about 40, somewhere between 30 and 40 looks really nice. Let's go ahead and desaturate those two because they're a little bit poppy. So immediately you can already see this starting to match just a little bit better. So I'm going to just go ahead and toggle this hue adjustment on and off. Look at that. That looks so much better. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the blues too. The blues here have, let's go ahead and add that little bit blue-green look to them. Okay, perfect. And in this case, I might actually brighten the blues just a little bit. Before, after. Okay, we can kind of see his skin tones a little bit pink, so let's go ahead and brighten up the white balance a little bit to fix that. Now, when you go warmer on here, you might have to go a little bit cooler in some of these other areas too. I'm going to try doing the yellow. Okay, gotta be careful with that one. So I think I might come down on the greens and just go a little bit more yellow. Just trying to play with it to see what I like. And we can actually maybe drop the brightness of the green. Well, yeah, maybe not. I do think I want to go ahead and cool those off a little bit. If you're unsure about which one it is, you can grab this little slider here and then drag it up or down and it will kind of adjust as necessary. Now, once again, you don't have to get it perfect. I know I'm one to sit here and play with it till death, but you know, the big thing is I think it's just, you know, kind of keeping the characteristics of it. This one's a little bit more challenging to match it perfectly, but I think compared to where we started at, this is looking a lot better. Let's see, we could try and brighten up the shadows just a little bit. Just trying to play with it just to figure out, you know, you can't mimic every single thing about it. I'm trying to see, I wonder if this does anything. No. But I'm kind of liking this right here. I wish I could get these greens just a little more blue, but you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. You could, I'm afraid to push it that far, but you know, that actually looks pretty good. And I think I want to just bring the saturation down just one more notch maybe. So right here, if we just compare this, I can back this off a little bit. I think that right there is looking pretty good. I can tell my yellows are a little bit too green, so let's go ahead and bring those back down. Yeah, I'm liking that. That's looking pretty good right there. Yeah, so we'll just kind of leave that there at that one. So before, after. So really, I think the main thing with matching the film is the color adjustments here. So if we just turn this off, whoa, that's what digital looks like by default. Hate that, it's so ugly. And we'll go ahead and turn that on, and it's looking a little bit better. If you wanted to make these blues just a little bit more saturated, you can. You can do that right there. That's looking pretty good. Let's change our sharpness to be about 25, and let's go ahead and add some of our grain in there. Once again, it's not an exact match, but you know, it looks way better than it did before. So you could actually come in here and maybe bump up the saturation of maybe the red a little bit, maybe the magenta. You know, something like that. Okay, cool. That one's looking pretty good. Let's go on to the next photo. We've got this one. It's more of like a sunset photo. All right, so this is the film scan on the left, and this is my digital equivalent here. Let's go ahead and reset this. Whoa, big difference. All right, first things first, crop it. Aspect ratio to 4:3 to match medium format film. Shift R on the keyboard to bring up our reference image. Let's go ahead and change this to Adobe Standard. Let's go ahead and brighten it up. Increase our white balance. Add contrast. Let's go ahead and adjust our turn curve. It's going to bring that in and up just a little bit. At our point, brighten it up some. Let's bring those highlights down some. It's looking pretty good. I went back and adjusted the white balance slider a little bit, and I might bring these blacks down some. Before, after. Take the white balance down just a little bit. Let's go ahead and adjust our greens, a little bit of our yellows, blue, kind of go negative a little bit. Skin tone needs a little bit more color, and probably a little pinker on this one, so I can go this way. Let's go ahead and desaturate our greens some. I don't want to bring our yellows down that much. We'll just kind of leave those where they're at. Before, after, that's looking pretty good. Maybe bring up our blue saturation some. That's looking real nice. I'm feeling like maybe this needs just a little bit of magenta tint to it. Sometimes it's hard to see with my eyes. You know, you can see it's a little off still, so you know, maybe this is actually that direction. Yeah, that looks a little better. Might even darken their skin a little bit. No, not like that. Maybe something like that. So this is why it's really important to have the film reference image, because if you're trying to do this without anything, you know, you just kind of get it all over the place. Of course, you might not be as particular as me. I have issues when it comes to this stuff. I sit here and tweak it until I'm dead in the eyes. All right, so I mean, from where we started, that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and add our toning, which I didn't do on the last photo, but it's a very subtle thing. You probably don't even need it. I don't like 40 on the sharpening. I like about 25. It's a little more soft. And then we'll add some grain. Yeah, I'm liking that. That looks pretty good. You wanted to be really particular, maybe bring the white balance down a little bit. That's feeling pretty good. Okay. We've got another one here. This is basically kind of like the same image we've already been working on, but let's go ahead and just do it for fun again. All right, 4:3. Going to crop this a little bit. You can press O on the keyboard and it'll cycle through different cropping methods, or guides rather. All right, Adobe Standard, white balance, and exposure, contrast, tone curve, highlights, blues, greens, saturation. Sorry about that. Maybe even adjust the reds on his lips a little bit. Might go ahead and add some orange skin tone. Maybe brighten it up just a hair. It's looking pretty good. 55, 5, 25 on saturate or sharpness. Add some grain. Could probably add a little bit of shadows back in there. Bring the blacks down some. I don't know, that's looking pretty good. You know, you kind of get the idea here. Before, after, before, after. I'm liking it. I think that looks pretty good. All right. One more. I don't actually have a film match for this photo, but just to show you the process without it. So this is before. Immediately, I'm just going to rotate it some. You can crop it 4:3 or not. I like to crop my vertical images to 4:3, but I like to leave horizontal ones in the original size, which is 35 millimeter. So we'll just kind of do that right there. And then same thing, let's go ahead and do our process here at Adobe Standard. Let's go ahead and brighten this up some. White balance. Saturate, contrast. Highlights. Tone curve. Brightness. Highlights. So I'm just kind of playing with it to find something I like. That was before the last time I edited it, which reminds me I'm going to warm it up just a little bit more. I can tell that the sharpness is really tack sharp, which is kind of overbearing a little bit. So let's just drop that. A little bit of grain. Let's add our split toning on here. 555. Maybe add just a little bit more and maybe a little more pink. So I'm actually liking this pretty well. Here's completely reset. And there's what we edited it like. I mean, looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So once you start to learn what you like and what it's supposed to look like, it's a little bit easier. But if you've got a reference image, it's so much easier to match it. So I hope that was informative for you, and want to thank you for viewing.